Is the Canon EOS M system dead? So what is my definition of a dead system? So as you can see, I own a lot of EOS M cameras and lenses. And to me, a dead system is something where we will see no significant new bodies. So for example, upgrade to the M6 Mark II or the M5, or a significant upgrade to the M50, which we have here. And second, no new lenses apart from like a simple rebadge of a kit lens. So for example, if you see a rebadge of this kit zoom, which is the 15-45, and they make a version 2 of this lens with very small improvements, I would still consider the system dead. What would change my mind about the system not being dead is if they released a new primes. So for example, this is the Canon 32mm lens, which is a fantastic prime lens. If they release, for example, a 56mm similar to the Sigma, or some other primes, or even better if they released 2.8 general purpose zoom, which I think is the lens that's missing the most from this lineup. It is possible they will release another small compact EOS M body. They have the M100, M200. They're very similar cameras. I would not be shocked if they release an M300 with very, very small improvements, maybe some cosmetic improvements, new colors. But I don't think we'll see any camera that would excite the enthusiast photographer. Like the Canon M6 Mark II. And with the system being dead, I don't think the cameras will completely disappear from stores. I think it's entirely possible that you walk into Walmart 3 years from now and you will still be able to buy the M200 with the standard kit zoom. I think the people who buy cameras at Walmart, they generally buy a camera with one lens and they barely if ever buy a second lens. So for them, it's not really a problem. The bigger question is it a worthwhile upgrade from their phone? And obviously, I could be completely wrong about this. Maybe Canon will surprise us and start releasing really exciting new gear, but I have some reason why I don't think this is the case. To me, there are three main reasons why I think the EOS M system is dead. The first one is there has been nothing new for a while. So the Canon M6 Mark II, which I'm using to shoot this video, has been released about 2.5 years ago, and that was the last significant camera released for the system. It's a great camera. I don't really like the flippy screen, I like the fully articulated screen, but in general has a 4K video, the new 32 megapixel sensor, and I use it to pretty much shoot all my YouTube videos. But that was the last significant camera. The other camera they released since then is the EOS M50 Mark II. This is the Mark I. The Mark II and the Mark I are essentially the same cameras, and there's been no other new bodies. So in last 2.5 years, they haven't released anything new for this system as far as camera bodies go. The same story goes for lenses. The Canon 32mm lens was the last lens released by Canon for the EF M mount, which is a fantastic lens, but it's been around for over 3 years. And there has been nothing new since then, not even like a new zoom. I think the lens that's missing the most from this mount to make it a really complete solution would be a 2.8 standard zoom lens. So something like 18-50 or 16-50 millimeter, so that would be like 24 millimeter to 70 millimeter equivalent at 2.8 aperture, or even f4 aperture, as long as it's super sharp, and that would be great for landscapes and general photography. The second big reason is the introduction of the Canon R10 and R7 cameras, which are cameras with the RF mount, but they use a crop size sensor. So to me, this is pretty much the last nail in the coffin. I think those cameras will replace the M system. Some people say that these cameras are still too big, but I think they'll shrink it down. So I think the R7 is a slightly different market segment than the M15 or even the M6 Mark II, but the R10 is pretty similar to the M system. So the R10 is still bigger than the M50, which I think is the closest competitor. I don't think it's the R10 is really a competitor to the M6 Mark II because of the different setup. So the R10 and M50, they both have electronic viewfinder, they both have flippy screens, and they have a similar feature set. The R10 has more features and more advanced autofocus and better video. I think a lot of people on the internet are using wrong reasoning. They say the R10 is not competitor to the M50 because the R10 has more advanced features. I think what people are forgetting is that the feature upgrade is partly due to the price. So the M50 is about $600-700, the R10 is about $1,000. But also to the fact that the R10 is 3 to 4 years newer camera than the M50. So you would expect better features with newer cameras. I could be convinced that the R10 is not a replacement for the M system if they have not introduced any RFS lenses. But since they introduced the RFS lenses, they essentially introduced a competitor to this cheap zoom kit, and also introduced a cheaper plastic 18 to 150 millimeter zoom. So to me, that's a clear indication that they're aiming for the same market as with the Canon M bodies. Canon officially has stated multiple times in interviews over the past month that R10 and R7 are not meant to be replacing the EOS M system, but I think it's just typical corporate speak because they don't want to absolutely kill the M system. They want to sell what they have. Maybe they'll milk it on the really low-end bodies like the M200 for a couple more years, but I would be really shocked if they keep going with this mount long-term. I think it's very unlikely we'll still see new cameras 5 years from now. I think Canon is still going to introduce a substitute for the Canon M200. In the R mount, it would be something like a Canon R100, and it's gonna be a camera with a small body like this original Canon M. Not a fully articulated screen, but a flippy up screen, and it's gonna be really small with really minimal controls, and most of the control is gonna be through the touchscreen at the back. And that I think they can sell at a very reasonable price of $600 or maybe $700 a kit, and that will completely replace the EOS M system. And the last issue with the Canon EFM mount was the lack of upgrade path. So here I have Canon EOS M cameras with EFM lenses, and as you can see, I built the entire kit. And let's say somebody who does this, now they want to start buying even more advanced lenses and maybe migrate slowly to full frame. With the EFM mount, they don't really have upgrade path. When we still have DSLRs, people could buy a DSLR with the crop sensor like the Rebels. They could start buying EFS lenses, and once they thought that EFS was not enough for them, they could also start buying full frame lenses. And those full frame lenses would work just fine on their crop sensor DSLRs. But with the mirrorless system, it doesn't work like that. The EFM lenses can only be used on the EOS M bodies and nothing else. And that's a huge disadvantage. So let's say I'm a young photographer who bought into the EOS M system. I bought a couple lenses, and now I'm ready to go full frame. I have an option to go to the Canon R system, but I might as well buy the Sony full frame cameras or an Nikon. There's really nothing holding me back in the Canon ecosystem, maybe except if I own some flashes, my speedlights won't work. But it's really a small incentive. So if I outgrow the EOS M system, I'm really open. I can really buy any full frame system. And that's not really advantageous for Canon. I think they would really like to lock their customers. I'm a really prime example of that. I started shooting Canon in 1998, still on film. Then I bought the Canon 10D in 2003. And I've been shooting Canon ever since. Mostly because I really like the Canon cameras, and I've been building a lens collection over the last 20 years, and it wouldn't be that easy for me to switch. That way Canon essentially gain a customer for life. Overall, I'm actually happy about the introduction of the R10 and R7 cameras, knowing that Canon has a clear path for the APS-C style sensors. To me, the introduction of the EFM mount was a strategic mistake by Canon that they made in 2012 because they didn't think they're gonna go full frame mirrorless eventually in the future. So let me explain what I mean by this. The EFM outer diameter is 58 millimeters. So if I take a ruler, you can see it's 58 millimeter diameter from the edge of the mount here to the edge of the mount here. And the RF mount outer diameter is only 65 millimeters. So imagine instead of this EFM mount, we would have a RF mount. Then this ring would not be 58 millimeters in diameter, but 65 millimeters in diameter. It might look a little bit funny, but actually wouldn't be that large. So if you take the height of the camera from the bottom of the camera all the way to the top of the cold shoe, it's pretty much exactly 65 millimeters. So they could have easily made this camera with the RF mount. The lenses would also have to be obviously a little bit wider on the bottom, but then they could taper into the standard diameter of the EFM lenses. So back in 2012, they could have easily made this original EOS M camera with the RF mount, and the diameter of the mount would be a little bit larger, but it would work just fine. So one slight downside is that the diameter of the lenses would also have to be 65 millimeters, but as you can see from the new released kit lenses for the RFS mount, they could be wider at the base of the lens and then kind of taper into the diameter of the EFM lenses. As far as the cameras fitting in the bag, you would see no difference. It wouldn't be maybe as elegant as all these EFM lenses, which they're all the same diameter, but it would work just fine. So imagine that if Canon in 2012, instead of releasing the EFM mount, they already released the RF mount, still only use crop sensor cameras. So in that case, now I have 9 lenses that would all fit on my full frame RF camera. And when I would put it on, it would automatically use the crop and everything would be nicely compatible. So to me, it was a strategic mistake that Canon made. It's not that big of a deal. People and companies make mistakes. It's just fact of life. Sometimes people have a really good plan and it just doesn't work out as they intended to. So overall, I'm not bitter despite having invested quite a bit in the EFM system. I just tallied up everything I ever bought. So I have 9 different lenses just for the EFM mount. I have 3 different bodies. So I have the original EOS M, then I have the M50, and then I also have the Canon M6 Mark II. I also have the standard EF to EFM adapter, and I also have the Voltrox Speed Booster, which also works as adapter between full frame EF lenses to the EFM mount, but it multiplies the focal length by 0.17, so it kind of makes it the same field of view as full frame lenses, and you gain a stop of light. So overall, everything you see on the table, plus the M6 Mark II with the 22mm lens, which I'm using to shoot this video, I spent over the years about $3,600. That might seem like quite a bit to a lot of people, but if you look at the grand scheme of things, so this Canon R with the Canon 24-70L lens cost more than my entire EOS M system. And if you buy even more expensive camera bodies like the Canon R5, that one camera body will cost more than the entire EOS M system that I have. So what's my personal plan with the EOS M cameras? I'm planning to keep using these cameras. I use the M6 Mark II, as I said, to shoot all my YouTube videos at this moment because that's the only camera that does full sensor with 4K. And I really enjoyed using these cameras for travel photography and things like that. Long term, I'm gonna transition more to the full frame EOS R system. As far as purchasing decisions, I'm definitely not planning to buy any more EFM lenses because I can use them in the future on any future bodies. And I'm planning to use these cameras and lenses as long as I feel I'm not being limited by the features. I think pretty much any camera on the market is fantastic, but there will be new features in the camera. So for example, the EOS M system does not have in-body image stabilization. Down the road in the future, I might find that to be limiting. Also, if I need to upgrade my video to sharper 4K or higher frame rates, I might be limited by the M system. And if that happens, I'll probably either sell off part of the system of all of it and then migrate fully to the EOS R system. So if you're on a budget, the EOS M system might be a great buy for you because I think that a lot of people who have these cameras and now they might migrate to the full frame or the Canon R10 or R7 or some other brand, maybe the Fuji. And there might be a glut of really good, lightly used EFM lenses on the market. So if you're okay with the features that are available in the cameras right now, buying the EFM system might not be a bad idea for you. But in general, if you're somebody who's getting into photography and really excited and you think that you're gonna grow this into a hobby long term, I would not recommend the EOS M system anymore. So either I would suggest to go full frame with the Canon R, the Canon RP is not very expensive, or maybe buy the R10 or R7. And also you can look at other brands. The Fuji cameras are really good. So the Fuji X cameras are crop sensor. So there's a similar size sensor to the Canon EOS M system. And they have really nice dials on top that you can use. So this is the Fujifilm X-T1, which you can buy super cheap nowadays. You can probably buy this for about $200 used. And you can go all the way up to the X-T4, which is a new camera that costs over $1,000. Here's the TTartisan, which is a fully manual lens. I don't have any of the native Fuji lenses, but they have a pretty wide selection of lenses. The one thing I've noticed is that the newest lenses, which are super nice f1.4 lenses, are quite expensive and quite big. So at that point, you might question why not just go full frame with the Canon R. Thank you for watching. If you're interested in any particular gear that I have and you want me to test something, let me know. And if there's enough interest, I might make a specific video about any of these lenses or the cameras.